went wrong, and it had been over 10 years, and it was like we couldn't even explain to each other what happened. Right. You know what I'm saying? We just know that we was young and we was angry, and you know what I'm saying, shots got fired, but
The Game just broke his silence. But what he says about Suge Knight and Biggie goes way beyond rumors. He claims secret calls and closed-door meetings lined up that night, but the hidden details point to money, grudges, and payback. In today's video, I'll break down what he said and why this might change everything. Stick around. Insider knowledge. In the Los Angeles hip-hop scene of the 1990s, certain voices suggest that the story of Biggie Smalls' murder extends far beyond what appeared in mainstream media. Among these voices, The Game has consistently referenced the presence of insider knowledge, pointing to an understanding held by those deeply embedded in the streets.
Pac was rapping. If I was one of his peers, I could have stopped him from getting himself killed, which, if we gonna be for real, got Biggie killed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that was
Biggie didn't get Biggie killed. Pac got Biggie killed. And Pac because he was too at the right time. You know what I'm saying? He was too too vocal at the wrong time. Like,
he does not claim to present evidence or identify perpetrators, but his observations imply that local actors, those involved in gangs, security, and close-knit label networks, retain detailed awareness of events that the public never sees. The Game's commentary portrays a world in which relationships, allegiances, and rivalries create a framework where information is both shared selectively and guarded tightly. This layer of street knowledge forms a backdrop to the circumstances of Biggie's death, suggesting that the full context involves far more than fame or media-driven narratives. Biggie's presence in Los Angeles created an inherent vulnerability. Unlike in Brooklyn, where he operated within familiar territory and networks, Los Angeles represented a landscape controlled by actors with extensive local knowledge. Being highly visible in this environment heightened risk. The Game has pointed out that street observation functions like a network of intelligence. Movements, schedules, and security routines are noticed, recorded, and interpreted. In this sense, fame and success are not just markers of status, they become liabilities. High-profile targets are observed not just for their artistic output, but for the pattern of their daily lives. Even minor missteps or overlooked details can provide opportunities for those capable of exploiting them. The culture of silence in these environments compounds the risk. Fear, loyalty, and adherence to street codes limit what gets shared with outsiders, including law enforcement and journalists. Those with direct knowledge may never speak, and the flow of operational detail is intentionally restricted. The Game's commentary underscores that understanding Biggie's death requires more than reviewing police reports. It demands consideration of an entire network of observant actors who maintain secrecy for personal safety or strategic advantage. Their collective memory and discretion shape the narrative in ways unseen by the public eye. Ultimately, the murder of Biggie Smalls emerges as a product of overlapping factors: territorial awareness, operational planning, and selective dissemination of knowledge. The incident cannot be reduced to chance or isolated acts of violence. It reflects an environment where exposure, status, and geographic position intersect with street intelligence and loyalty, creating conditions in which an attack becomes possible and survival uncertain. For investigators and analysts, the insights offered by insiders like The Game are critical. They illuminate the complex dynamics behind one of hip-hop's most infamous and unresolved cases, revealing that what is publicly reported may represent only a fraction of the true operational story. Linked deaths. The deaths of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls are often portrayed as separate, tragic incidents, but deeper examination reveals a complex web connecting the two events. Tupac's shooting in Las Vegas occurred 6 months before Biggie's drive-by in Los Angeles, and patterns in timing, location, and network affiliation suggest coordination rather than coincidence.
Both communities are mourning the death of the rapper known as Notorious B.I.G.
Analysts and insiders argue that these killings were part of a broader continuum, where retaliation, territorial tension, and industry rivalry converged in a sequence that transformed isolated events into linked occurrences. Viewing one case without the other risks missing the broader operational landscape in which these murders took place. Biggie's movement into Los Angeles exposed him to significant danger. Far from his East Coast base, he entered territory governed by networks with operational advantages, local knowledge, and the ability to monitor high-profile targets. Observers emphasize that leaving familiar environments amplifies vulnerability. In Los Angeles, actors had insight into traffic patterns, security arrangements, and public appearances, which could be exploited. The geography of the city itself, dense, surveilled, and politically divided among street networks, meant that movement was not neutral. It was an activity that could be tracked, analyzed, and acted upon by those with awareness of Biggie's presence. Timing played a critical role in linking the two murders. Tupac's death created a heightened environment of alertness, retaliation, and tension among rival factions. Biggie's murder, occurring months later, aligned with this timeline and coincided with ongoing West Coast-East Coast tensions in music and street culture. Analysts suggest that the convergence of opportunity, planning, and geographical awareness indicates the involvement of actors capable of coordinating action with knowledge of prior events. Both killings exhibit similar patterns in method, situational awareness, and the utilization of intelligence, pointing to deliberate orchestration rather than random occurrence. The persistence of unresolved questions in both cases is intimately tied to these shared networks. Witnesses with knowledge may be constrained by loyalty, fear, or adherence to street codes, preventing disclosure. Intelligence about routines and affiliations is tightly held, which complicates law enforcement efforts. From an investigative perspective, the link between the murders emphasizes that understanding the Biggie case requires a systemic approach. The murders were not just violent acts. They were embedded in a structured environment of awareness, observation, and control, where each action had strategic implications within a broader sequence. Street logic analysis of Biggie Smalls' murder highlights the decisive role of street-level dynamics in shaping the outcome. The perpetrators operated with detailed knowledge of routines, access points, and timing, suggesting that the act was carefully calculated rather than spontaneous.
And I mean, when you get money, people want it to never run out for them. You know what I'm saying? But as you get money, you have to start prioritizing you and prioritizing the people that you need to take care of. So
commentary from insiders like The Game points to an environment where observation, territorial awareness, and operational competence intersected with the entertainment industry, creating a unique set of risk factors. The environment was not chaotic, it was structured, with networks capable of executing complex actions without leaving obvious evidence. Los Angeles at the time was defined by territorial control and entrenched networks of influence. Gang affiliations, knowledge of local roots, and the surveillance of high-profile targets created conditions where certain individuals could act with relative impunity. The Game emphasizes that the capacity to carry out such operations was not universal. Only those with access to both information and operational resources could execute an attack successfully. The alignment of motive, capability, and environment produced a scenario where Biggie's movements could be monitored, weaknesses exploited, and intervention timed for maximum effect. Operational variables extended beyond general territory. Insight into routes, timing of events, and proximity to hostile actors made the attack feasible. These factors point to premeditation and the exploitation of spatial and temporal advantage. Analysts highlight that understanding Biggie's murder requires consideration of both the physical layout and the socio-political networks at play. The intersection of street knowledge and industry influence created a risk landscape that was highly specific, measurable, and, ultimately, deadly. The unsolved nature of the case is closely tied to these dynamics. Codes of silence, fear of reprisal, and overlapping allegiances between street and industry actors hindered investigative progress. The structure of these networks allowed for observation, coordination, and execution with minimal exposure. Biggie's death illustrates how street logic, territorial awareness, tactical observation, and selective dissemination of knowledge can shape outcomes in high-profile incidents. The event is as much a demonstration of operational capability as it is a tragedy, revealing the calculated intersection of fame, geography, and networked influence. Key figures. The network surrounding Biggie Smalls included individuals whose influence spanned both the music industry and street-level operations. Suge Knight, head of Death Row Records, is often discussed as a central figure in the West Coast-East Coast dynamic. His authority extended beyond traditional business operations. He maintained connections with street networks, affiliates, and individuals capable of acting on sensitive information.
I think Suge was jealous because he wasn't the one that put out a blood. I think he wanted to have his hand in anything that was Damu or Pyru or blood related in music. And because
in this context, events involving high-profile artists were rarely isolated. Every move was informed by a combination of loyalty, strategy, and awareness of local power structures. Understanding Knight's presence is essential for analyzing how Biggie's murder could occur in such a calculated environment. The Game has noted that people in positions like Knight's held considerable leverage over both territory and personnel. This includes the ability to influence decisions, monitor movements, and control access to artists. In Biggie's case, the overlap between music operations and gang networks meant that high-profile targets could be tracked and, if necessary, manipulated without leaving a clear trail. Operational knowledge combined with authority created an environment where strategic actions could be implemented with precision, leaving minimal evidence while maximizing impact. This dual control blurred the line between business and street influence, making accountability complex. Figures with dual authority complicate the investigative process. Actions taken by individuals connected to both legitimate and illicit networks are difficult to trace, particularly when loyalty and fear limit cooperation. The game's insights suggest that the environment of influence allowed actors to shape outcomes behind the scenes, creating conditions where events could unfold with calculated risk and minimal public trace. It also explains why law enforcement faced significant hurdles, as critical knowledge remained hidden within overlapping spheres of power. Ultimately, the presence of high-authority figures shaped the operational landscape around Biggie. Their capacity to observe, influence, and act created an intricate system of control in which incidents like his murder could be executed with methodical planning. This environment underscores the importance of examining not just the immediate actors in violent events, but the broader network that enables and facilitates them. For analysts and historians, understanding the interplay of authority, loyalty, and operational intelligence is critical to piecing together how and why the murder occurred. Geography and vulnerability. Biggie Small's murder occurred in Los Angeles, far from his Brooklyn base, placing him in an environment where local actors had both knowledge and operational control. Being outside familiar territory increased exposure, and analysts note that movement into a region dominated by rival networks significantly heightened risk.
I almost think more rappers died in LA than any other city in the world.
Of course.
Why do you think that is?
Because number one, LA is more frequented, right? Because the awards are here more than not.
Los Angeles presented a spatial and social landscape where patterns of movement, routine schedules, and public visibility could be observed and acted upon. For someone of Biggie's profile, stepping into such a zone without the same level of local intelligence introduced vulnerabilities that could be exploited with precision. The location of the attack near the Peterson Automotive Museum provides insight into operational considerations. Observers have noted that the area allowed for the use of escape routes, observation points, and traffic patterns that favored attackers. While Biggie's entourage may have assumed protective measures traveled with him, the combination of unfamiliar terrain and the presence of adversarial networks undermined standard security assumptions. The spatial dimension of risk was amplified by Los Angeles's urban complexity, where geography, street networks, and rival territories intersected with knowledge held by local actors. Timing also intersected with geography to increase danger. The murder occurred 6 months after Tupac Shakur's death, during a period of heightened tension between coasts, labels, and street factions. Analysts suggest that the alignment of Biggie's movements with specific locations and dates was no coincidence. Being in Los Angeles at that precise moment amplified the risk, turning routine promotional activities into potential exposure to actors capable of orchestrating an attack. Geography and timing worked together to create a window of vulnerability that was both operationally exploitable and strategically significant. This convergence of factors underscores the importance of territorial awareness in evaluating high-profile incidents. Biggie's death was not simply a matter of being in the wrong place. It was an example of how spatial and social intelligence intersect to influence outcomes. Analysts argue that understanding the murder requires an examination of geography as a risk multiplier, where movement outside familiar territory increases exposure and places high-profile individuals at the mercy of local knowledge and networks capable of lethal action. Silence and impunity. The aftermath of Biggie Small's murder demonstrates how cultural and operational codes can impact justice. In the environment surrounding the incident, loyalty, fear, and adherence to street norms limit the sharing of information. Individuals with knowledge of the murder may exist, but protective behaviors, allegiance to networks, and fear of reprisal prevent them from speaking publicly. Analysts highlight that this creates a situation where critical knowledge is inaccessible to law enforcement, making conventional investigative methods insufficient.
That we were beefing at that point in time, like I said, I'm not the one that, fired the shots. I happened to be talking to Kanye at the time I heard the gunshots.
Witnesses and participants often operate within dual networks that bridge legitimate industry roles and street-based affiliations. This duality complicates investigative efforts, as individuals may understand what occurred, yet remain silent due to personal risk or adherence to codes of discretion. The game has emphasized that impunity in cases like Biggie's is less about procedural failure and more about the structural realities of the environment. The presence of overlapping spheres of influence creates a buffer around actors who might otherwise be held accountable. The protective nature of these networks ensures that even high-profile murders can remain unsolved. When individuals with operational knowledge are removed, silenced, or otherwise unavailable, law enforcement is left with partial information and limited leads. The intersection of entertainment influence, gang affiliation, and strategic silence creates layers of concealment that challenge traditional investigative approaches. These dynamics illustrate how impunity functions within a networked system rather than as an isolated legal oversight. Understanding silence and impunity is key to interpreting the case. Biggie's murder was not just a violent act. It was executed in an environment structured to conceal operational detail and protect actors through adherence to street codes. The persistence of unresolved questions reflects not failure, but the deliberate structuring of knowledge and risk. Analysts studying the incident must consider how fear, loyalty, and strategic concealment shape what is visible to outsiders, revealing the murder as both a tactical and social outcome of a controlled operational ecosystem. Visibility and exposure. Biggie Smalls' status as a prominent figure in mid-1990s hip-hop made him highly visible, not only to fans but to networks capable of monitoring high-profile movement. Fame acted as a double-edged sword. While it elevated him above the average target, it also made him an obvious presence in an environment where street networks, rival factions, and industry actors closely observed the comings and goings of influential figures. Analysts suggest that visibility in such an environment can become a vulnerability when combined with operational knowledge and territorial awareness.
You guys squashed it at one point. Wasn't there like a West Coast peace treaty or something that happened and something?
It was a West Coast peace treaty. I don't think it had it.
The game has commented extensively on how visibility intersects with risk. Once someone reaches Biggie's level of prominence, their schedules, routines, and travel patterns become predictable to those with the means to monitor them. Being in Los Angeles for promotional appearances and industry obligations placed Biggie in a high-stakes situation. He was operating outside his home territory in a city with complex networks of local knowledge and surveillance. Every move could be anticipated, and this awareness increases the probability of a carefully executed attack. High visibility also alters the effectiveness of standard protection. Security personnel may not have the same level of local intelligence or influence as rival networks controlling the area. Analysts emphasize that the asymmetry of knowledge, where local actors are familiar with territory, escape routes, and social dynamics, makes prominent individuals like Biggie especially exposed. Fame does not offer immunity. It magnifies risk by making movements, routines, and presence easily observable. Ultimately, visibility is a critical factor in understanding the circumstances of Biggie's murder. His prominence in the public eye was not merely symbolic. It influenced operational decisions and shaped opportunities for those with intent. Analysts argue that the incident demonstrates how exposure, when combined with timing, geography, and local intelligence, can create a lethal vulnerability. Being known in this context was as much a liability as it was a marker of success. Biggie's death illustrates how fame intersects with strategy, risk, and operational capacity in ways that can determine life or death. Legacy, and cultural impact. The murder of Biggie Smalls left a lasting mark on hip-hop culture, reshaping both behavior and perception within the industry. Artists, managers, and industry insiders became acutely aware of the interplay between celebrity, territory, and risk.
That's what I hate a lot of times about hip-hop is some of these artists, they die before they get a chance to really grasp what it is that they need to in life. It's the untimely demises of Big.
The unresolved nature of the case reinforced a culture of caution, influencing how high-profile figures moved, traveled, and conducted business. Security measures became more stringent, crews approached travel differently, and decision-making increasingly considered potential exposure to rival networks. Analysts point out that the ambiguity surrounding the murder created a dual legacy. On one hand, Biggie's music remains immortalized, his influence on hip-hop undeniable. On the other, the unanswered questions about motive, actors, and accountability continue to resonate, shaping how successors navigate the complex interplay between visibility and risk. The murder highlighted that fame and power do not guarantee safety, and that operational intelligence within rival networks could impose fatal consequences. The game has emphasized that the impact extends beyond individual security. Biggie's death provides a case study in how overlapping networks of influence, loyalty, and control operate in the industry. The murder became a structural lesson embedded within the culture itself, demonstrating that personal choices, geographical movement, and public exposure carry measurable operational risks. Industry practices evolved in response, reflecting a broader understanding of how the intersection of fame and territory can affect outcomes. Finally, the legacy is defined as much by perception as fact. Biggie's death is remembered not only for the loss of a voice, but for the lessons imposed on those who followed. Fame, geography, and networked influence converge in ways both visible and hidden, and his story underscores the importance of analyzing hip-hop history through a lens that accounts for strategy, risk, and operational context. The enduring ambiguity keeps the narrative alive, ensuring that his music, influence, and the unresolved questions of his murder continue to shape both culture and caution in equal measure. Before you go, remember, the story behind Biggie's death and Suge Knight's involvement is far from fully uncovered. The secrets, the motives, the unseen threads, it's all part of a puzzle that the public has only glimpsed. If you want to see what happens next, the testimonies, the hidden alliances, and the truth that may finally surface, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next revelation could change everything.